First off, we appreciate you investing your time with us today. We know your time is valuable. Really, the goal of today is to talk about ITAD's role in AI data center scale. And really, what we see is scaling AI data centers requires more than just new infrastructure. My name is Michael Young. I'm the Director of Data Center Services here at DMD. I've been in business technology for just roughly 10 years now, spanning across software as a service, application layer, emerging tech, and of course, ITAD. I'm joined by one of my favorite peers here, Craig Kober. So, Craig, if you just want to introduce yourself, we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. You're one of my favorites too, even though you've only been here a few months. You've quickly risen to the top. I'm Craig Kober, Director of Enterprise IT Asset Disposition. I've been working with DMD for about 2 years. I was a vendor to DMD and just really wanted to be a part of the mission. As soon as I started talking to them, I got really excited about the reuse first mission and the commitment to sustainability and transparency, and the way that, quite frankly, we run the company is just, a really ideal place for me to work, kind of built around my ethics. And so it was a really easy decision to join the team here. And I helped some of the largest companies in the country to build a reuse first ITAD program to repurpose their hardware to quantify the ESG impact and to, of course, meet their sustainability and governance requirements around the disposition of their hardware across more than just data center end user as well. But 2 years in, loving it and still finding joy in every day.
Perfect. So we've seen a lot of changes taking place in the data center space. And after attending Data Center World up in DC, it only validated what we're seeing in numbers. So chief among them is going to be the rapid impact of AI, which is truly accelerating infrastructure life cycles. We're seeing it really condensed these days. Companies are really looking to leverage modern technology to drive better outcomes. What else that's really causing is it's causing volatility in the secondary market. So as these decisions are made, as it's accelerated, we're seeing a few things really impacting the need for these assets at that second level, which Craig's really going to dive into pretty heavily here in a little bit. And then lastly, and this is the one that really stood out to me, it was kind of surprising, which is going to be, there's a lot of pushback around data centers right now. There's a lot of community concerns. And I always like to start by saying, people's hearts are in the right places, right? They worry about the future. They worry about their kids. They worry about the environment. So it's really important for us to kind of dive into that, kind of educate the people out there in our communities to make sure that we're making responsible choices to move forward. So, Craig, I'm going to kick it over to you, who's going to get us started with our very first poll.
Yeah, first we want to heat check just among those three categories, what seems to be most relevant to you? Lizzie, if you could kick off the poll, we're really interested in just understanding, how are our community prioritizing these challenges between the refresh cycles speeding up and the secondary market volatility impacting pricing, as well as the community perception around data center, which is really significant. It's kind of impossible not to acknowledge it. I'll even participate in this as well because I have my own personal opinions. So I submitted my vote there, and I'm interested to see what people come up with. Looks pretty even, actually. That's interesting. I don't expect secondary market volatility to be the top of the team, and yet here we are. Wow.
Yeah, it's moving around a little bit, but definitely dear to our hearts, right?
And community concerns of environmental impact is second too, which is interesting as well. I mean, that's not crazy to think about, but it is just good to see that people do genuinely care about the community around them as well as the environmental impact. I mean, I'm very sustainability driven, so it's a high priority for me. I'm glad that I'm not alone. It's always nice to find people share your values, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's skip over to the next slide and we'll kind of dive in. I'm just going to start with an anecdote about a movie that I love, very near and dear to my heart, with I think it's Joaquin Phoenix, called Her, which came out when I was in college. It's about this, it was sci-fi at the time, not so much these days, but about a society where everybody starts having access to these very sophisticated AI agents that live in their phones, and they start to build relationships, both personal and professional, with them. And just it changes society overnight, as you can imagine, having this hyper efficient personal assistant or partner right available at all times who can just accomplish anything immediately. And it's crazy to see that that's somewhat happening to our society today. Maybe not exactly at that scale or at that speed, but it just, I don't need to educate anybody here on how much AI has changed our society in the recent years and how much it's going to change it moving forward. Really, let's, diving into the impact that has in like the data center life cycle and the architecture around it. It's just everything is moving at the highest level. Everything is moving way faster than it was before. Refresh cycles that used to be 5 to 8 years are now, 5 to 3 years or even less. Bottlenecking, infrastructure demand, components, RAM, CPU, GPU, hard drives, even the servers and the real estate are all becoming bottlenecked around this massive demand to build out AI infrastructure. And then, of course, preparing for the future. Like we're in this learning language model right now where these AI models are just drinking in tons and tons and tons of information that they're spitting it back in their own ways, but eventually they'll shift to this inference model where the AI, they've done the learning. Now they're just spinning the information and feeding it back into their own clients. And what that's going to turn into is it's going to shift the data center landscape from these large central AI hyperscale centers into these edge compute where, smaller cities are going to have more data centers popped up locally just to deliver information faster. So when we talk about like what's really changing, you can ding it back one slide actually.
Sure.
When we talk about like what's driving the change around these, it's just trying to keep up with the application strategy, right? These companies, leveraging AI in their technologies. You see it on all sorts of websites. Like, oh, hey, now my customer service starts with an AI chatbot. I'm using ChatGPT to help me with my schoolwork if I'm a student. Or, I personally use it to like help with recipes or to do household chores and like figure out, hey, can you help me understand what's the best what's the best kitchen island for this house that we just moved into, for example. There's just a lot of applications for it, and every company is in this gold rush to try to figure out how can we build it into our infrastructure. And the result of that is it's totally changed the hardware landscape. If you want to, actually, no, stick on this one for just one moment. It's, companies are trying to scoop up as much RAM as they can. All of the new DDR5, DDR6 manufactured RAM is already bottlenecked for 2 years. So companies like SK Hynix, Samsung, and companies like NVIDIA who are producing computer components, all of their inventory for up to 2 years is already pre-ordered by these hyperscalers or by these companies that they have buying relationships with from. Of course, that's driving up value for the primary market. It's also just changing how companies have to use their existing infrastructure. I like to think of it as almost an F1 vehicle, right? Like these companies are now they're stuck with a set number of parts, and they've got this one vehicle. What are a couple tweaks that they can make? Was it the tires or the way that the aerodynamics of the vehicle work, or the engine, to get an extra mph, to get an extra small edge on their brake pressure? It's the same with data centers. How can we utilize this existing ecosystem of equipment, since we can't get anything new, to improve and to accomplish really like our AI application strategy? And part of that is relying on ITAD to repurpose equipment. So if you want to ding over to the next slide.
Yeah, Craig, kind of on that note, it sounds like speed, performance, how do we become more efficient, kind of managing these changes? So can you kind of walk us through what are some best practices to make sure that as organizations, we're really kind of going down the right path to get the right results?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's really about being agile and nimble with the equipment that you have. So ITAD is typically seen, and this is somewhat changing, and we're making a strong effort for it, but it's typically seen as this reactive process. Hey, I'm going to be offloading X servers, or I'm going to be, refreshing 1,000 laptops in my environment, and so I'm going to need somebody to handle that after the fact. Companies are trying to accomplish to try and be more efficient with that process by coming to us sooner, coming to their ITAD partner sooner. Because what that means is it means planning for the end at the beginning of the life cycle so that they can make decisions more in advance with advisors like us to help determine, hey, so this equipment might have sold for this much 6 months ago, but today it's actually selling for this much. Or this can actually stay in your life cycle if we like redeploy it. So for example, a lot of companies are moving equipment out of their primary data centers to like their on-premises, if it's a data center closet, right? So, hey, it might not have 10,000 servers on site, but we do need, 10. So we can send those over there, repurpose the equipment to keep it in their life cycle to draw continuous value while supporting their goals and using it. Really planning for the end of life helps to make it more efficient, to reduce the cost, and to find better reuse purposes, both within and without their organization, just by having a strategic partner in place. We've helped a lot of companies even this year amongst all these raising prices just to draw more value out of their equipment by putting it in different places in their environment. The data center industry is inherently a reuse first industry. I mean, we saw a lot of this at Data Center World, Michael. Companies are trying to retrofit other buildings into new data centers or repurpose existing power lines, water lines, or natural gas lines to power these facilities. And so I think there is a lot of encouragement for like a reuse first mentality in data center in construction, in the life cycle, and of course in end of life, and trying to find its next best use for this equipment when it leaves a client's ecosystem. And really the best way to accomplish that on the resale side is with a transparent revenue share, so that clients can understand the value of each individual component, where it's being sold to, what's the best channel for resale. The market's been super volatile. I mean, we've talked about this internally constantly for 6 to 8 months. I refer to a website, PC Parts Picker, where I buy my consumer grade RAM and components, but you can just look at the price of DDR4 and 5 RAM over the last 18 months. Back in October, spiked 2, 3, 4, 5 times in value. As of, I think it was February through March, it's really started to flatten. And so our strategic value in that is to be able to communicate that to clients, say like, hey, these are not investments. I've had some folks reach out to me, hey, we're not getting rid of this, we want to see how it goes up in value. Let us handle that for you. We have a strategic value to your IT budget that we can figure out the best way to repurpose and the best timing to repurpose this equipment, which more often than not is just right now.
Yeah, Craig, that last bullet point here, I think it's really important for us to sit down into that one as well. So a couple questions that I always love to ask clients when I jump on the phone is, today, and a lot of our clients are enterprise, so they have a global footprint. I'll ask, how many ITAD providers are you currently using? And usually the answer we get is too many. And then the next question I ask is, how many dashboards do you have to go into to kind of gain visibility to these assets? And if you would just take a minute and kind of explain the value from an end user perspective here on what integrating ITAD into their ITSM looks like and the benefits of that. Would you mind just kind of giving us a description of what that looks like?
Yeah, of course. It's really based on a technology that we've spent the better part of 18 months building out internally. But really, it's the same. It's like zero trust, right? It's removing opportunities for human error and just automatic reconciliations based on data. So what we do is we can go right and integrate into our client's ServiceNow or their other ITSM platform. And what that turns into, it's just immediate transfer of data when it reaches a certain stage of our processing. So if, for example, we disposition laptops and they're resold, we can communicate that data in near real time. And similarly with other, if it's redeployed or whatever the disposition ends up being. But what this causes is it reduces the human opportunity, right? So humans make mistakes, data doesn't make mistakes. So you're removing the human touch points, which makes the data cleaner, it moves faster. And when you're reconciling, 100 laptops, that's one thing. If you're starting to reconcile, 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 data center assets, then, I mean, that's just a ton of time that these IT teams are spending manually reconciling, or even if it's just point-to-point reconciling, and God knows if they're coming from multiple different reports, it's just a time sink. And it's like talking about that F1 vehicle again. companies that are managing these high sophisticated data centers need to kind of find every minute they can to stay efficient and operational and to put that time and that labor and those brains in the right place to making their AI strategy successful. And so if we can reduce that on the back end, having, again, it's all about having a plan in place on the front end to cover the back end.